You're doing everything you were told to do. You wake up early. You plan your day. You stay busy. You try to be productive. And yet, there's this quiet fear you don't like admitting. The feeling that no matter how hard you work, it still might not be enough. Because somewhere in the background, you keep hearing it. AI is faster. AI is smarter. AI doesn't get tired. So you grind harder. You optimize more. You try to outwork the future. But the more productive you become, the more replaceable you secretly feel. You're crossing tasks off lists that never end. You're moving fast, but you're not sure where you're going. And late at night, when everything is quiet, the question shows up anyway: what if all this effort still isn't safe? No one really talks about that part. They just tell you to hustle, to learn faster, to do more. But what if productivity, the very thing you're relying on to survive, is also the thing making you fragile? What if being busy is no longer protection, but a distraction? Because the truth is, machines can already do a lot of what productivity is built on: speed, efficiency, output. And if that's all you're optimizing for, you're competing on the one battlefield you're guaranteed to lose. The real question isn't how to work harder in the age of AI. It's what actually makes a human valuable when speed stops being enough. Productivity was never meant to be your shield. It was meant to be a tool. But somewhere along the way, it turned into an identity. You started believing that as long as you were busy, you were safe. That as long as you were outputting, improving, optimizing, you were moving forward. Here's the uncomfortable truth: productivity is easy to copy. And in the age of AI, it's one of the first things to be automated. Speed can be replicated. Efficiency can be scaled. Endless output can be generated without rest, emotion, or doubt. That's why being productive no longer guarantees relevance. It just means you're good at executing tasks. And tasks are exactly what machines are learning to do best. This matters because hustle culture trained you to measure your value by how much you produce, how fast you respond, how full your schedule is, how tired you are at the end of the day. So when AI enters the picture and outperforms you at those same metrics, the fear hits harder, not because you're failing, but because the rules quietly changed. Think about it like this: if your entire edge is doing more, faster, for longer, then you're competing in a race where you can't win. Not because you're weak, but because endurance and speed are no longer human advantages. And that's where the anxiety really comes from. Not the technology itself, but the realization that grinding harder won't protect you the way it used to. The problem isn't that you're not productive enough. The problem is that productivity alone was never designed to carry your future. Here's the shift most people miss. What makes you valuable now isn't how fast you move. It's how deeply you think. AI thrives on speed. It connects patterns instantly. It generates answers on command. But it doesn't sit with questions. It doesn't wrestle with uncertainty. It doesn't decide what matters. Depth is slower by nature, and that's exactly why it matters more. When you think deeply, you're not just reacting. You're choosing. You're forming judgment. You're connecting ideas that don't obviously belong together. You're creating meaning, not just output. This matters because the future won't reward people who can do tasks faster. It will reward people who can decide which tasks are worth doing at all. Think about creativity for a moment. Not creativity as art, but creativity as original direction. Seeing a problem differently, asking a better question, framing an idea in a way that actually moves people. AI can generate options, but it can't choose purpose. And most people never develop this skill because hustle culture trained them to avoid stillness, to fill every quiet moment, to measure progress by motion. But depth requires space. It requires boredom. It requires thinking without immediately producing something to prove you were productive. A simple example: two people use the same AI tool. One asks it to do more work, faster. The other uses it to explore ideas, challenge assumptions, and refine thinking. They look equally productive on the surface, but only one of them is growing harder to replace. Because when you develop depth, you're no longer competing with machines. You're deciding how machines are used. At this point, a part of you might be pushing back. You might be thinking, "That sounds nice, but I don't have time to think deeply." Or, "I'm not creative like that." Or even, "This feels abstract. I need something practical." That resistance is normal. It doesn't mean you're incapable. It means you've been trained to equate worth with visible output for a very long time. Slowing down can feel unsafe when you're already afraid of falling behind. Choosing depth can feel risky when the world keeps telling you to move faster. And questioning hustle culture can feel like you're giving up, even when you're not. But here's the reframe. Discomfort isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're stepping out of an old survival strategy. You're not trying to abandon productivity. You're learning not to hide behind it. Developing judgment, creativity, and depth doesn't require you to overhaul your life overnight. It requires moments of pause. Moments where you think before you act. Moments where you ask why before how fast. And yes, it will feel awkward at first, because growth in the AI era doesn't look like busyness. It looks like intention. That tension you feel right now, that's not fear holding you back. That's you, adjusting to a new way of becoming valuable. The shift you're making isn't about doing less. It's about becoming someone different. You're becoming the kind of person who doesn't measure their worth by how busy they look. The kind of person who thinks before reacting. Who chooses depth over noise. Who understands that in a world moving faster every day, clarity is power. You don't need to outwork machines. You need to outgrow the mindset that told you speed was the goal. This isn't something you master overnight. It's built quietly, through small decisions made consistently. Moments where you pause instead of rushing. Moments where you think instead of scrolling. Moments where you choose meaning over momentum. So here's one simple action to take today. Create just 10 minutes of space. No phone, no input, no pressure to produce. And ask yourself one question that actually matters to you. That's how this starts. Not with more effort, but with better direction. And if this way of thinking resonates, stay here, because learning how to stay human in the age of AI is a journey, not a single video.